Prehistoric European Pre-International Relations. Seró Archaeological Site. Albertos to Oriol Galabat Alejandro Garces Zuelu. A functionable, complex, and interactive system of pre-international relations has existed since early times of humanity. Hunter-gatherer bands and the first sedentary tribes engaged on material and cultural exchanges, creating vast network of relations. And the Seró's archaeological discoveries illustrates these pre-international ways of relation. Most IR scholars start studying this discipline since the appearance of states or other centralized political forms of organizations. However, according to some authors like Buzan and Little, it is important to consider the prehistoric units of organization. Interactions between different groups did not arise with city-states, but existed in a more reduced scale from several millennia before. It must be taken into account that historical processes are not uniform, not all groups share the same stages and neither the same evolution. In this research, we have put the focus on the two first forms of human organization, the hunter-gatherer bands and the sedentary tribes. Even if they have lots of differences, they share a core element which is indispensable to understand their functioning: egalitarianism. Hunter-gatherers were the first form of organization of humans. They were nomadic, autonomous, and have few members. Because of their small size, they had to set up relations with other groups in order to survive and to obtain mating partners to reproduce. Thus, the general idea of rudimentary and isolated units is not accurate. Moreover, extensive systems were made at this purpose. From 10,000 BCE, hunter-gatherer bands started a process called nucleation, which consisted on settling down on small villages. This was the beginning of sedentary tribes. This change was brought by the development of agriculture and farming, which allowed to store food. Therefore, living conditions increased. The changing factor is that settlements allow to have a higher interaction capacity, material exchanges or arrange marriages among them. Barter was a key issue in that period, not only for the subsistence but also for the social and spiritual life. It consisted of exchanging products throughout communities either produced or collected from the surrounding land. We usually think in barter as something rudimentary and simple. However, these products traveled kilometers all over the Mediterranean Sea, creating a huge vast network of economic and social relations. Exchange was not only of basic products but also non-necessary products, for religious or cultural purpose, ideas or beliefs. Some example of this large-scale exchange are amber, from the Baltic, which has been founded all over Europe, or Veracite. Exchange was directly related to marriage. They were exogamous for the subsistence of the community, but also to ensure peace between groups. To sum it up, either marriage but also material and cultural exchanges were the basis of pre-international relation system. The Seró archaeological site is the perfect example to show how the system of prehistorical European pre-international relations worked.
After this brief introduction to pre-international systems, let's introduce the archaeological site of Seró that illustrates the main factors of the precursor to international relations. The site dates back to the 4500 before the Common Era and has the characteristics of a sedentary tribe that has nucleated and developed agriculture. The tribe settled in the middle of a valley near a river, providing water and also facilitated the contact with other tribes. It also was nearby the Segre River, which provided a direct access to the tribes on the other side of the Pyrenees as well as barter access with tribes in the coast. Nowadays the site lays in the comarca of La Noguera. The objects found there reaffirm our original thesis. Barter was very important for their survival. As of today, several campaniform pottery survives. Its importance relies on the method to produce it and decorative motifs, which were the same as the ones used in the present France and Central Europe. Buttons made out of teeth were also found there, also in the same style that the ones found in several other European sites, implying material or cultural exchanges. However, non-necessary products were also exchanged, as the necklaces made out of seashells can certify. The nearest coast was at around 100 kilometers from the village, but nevertheless they obtained the seashells to give prestige to their tribe. Their concept of property possibly was different, and it can't be known if it was a private or collective possession. But Ser is most well known because of its important cultural monuments, the statues menhirs. They were sculpted stones depicting human bodies, very typical of the Chalcolithic. They conformed the center of the village, the place of gathering and of early religious practices. The ones of Ser are remarkable as they included the tallest of such structures in Europe. The monumental complex includes 3 menhirs, now broken into different parts after deliberate desecration in the 2nd millennia before the Common Era. Their sizes are uncommon, as the biggest one is 7 meters tall. The second one, of 2.6 meters, is also outstanding, while the third one is average. Now, we have to imagine the different fragments to conform the different statues and try to understand their depiction of bodies. That was not based on physical traits but on clothing. The biggest statue depicts a woman, thus enshrining the importance that women had in egalitarian societies where hierarchies did not exist and women had decision-taking powers and were the grantors of stability, a proof that the tribe was organized in a matriarchy. The present image represents the frontal appearance of the woman, which is represented by the stone engraving. As it may be seen, there's a specific pattern that represents the robe that women wore. In a more detailed image, it can be seen how the zigzag pattern is broken on the lateral, marking the difference between the robe, made of vegetal fibers, and a veil that covered the woman from the head to the toes. Moreover, in the superior part the engraving changes vertically to depict a diadem, possibly of a precious metal, a symbol of the leadership of women. On the other side of the menhir, the engraving changes to accurately depict the back of the woman. In this case it is made of little squares, which represent a cape made of the fur of different animals, possibly rabbits. This reconstruction of prehistoric clothing has been very influenced by the discovering of frozen tzy in the Alps, preserving part of the clothes. The same pattern continued equally to the feet. There is no consensus whether the woman represents a leader of that time or a deification of women. The second statue depicts a man. We know it because his robe is interrupted by a belt, which were typically worn by men and used to hang knives. It is believed that this menhir represents hunters. What they both have in common is the depiction of feet, which is represented by just ending the patterns of the robe and the cape, leaving the stone polished. To have an idea of the incredible size of the statues, let's compare it with humans. That meant that in a society where food was not ensured, they decided to substitute part of their productive activities to build and carve the monuments. Because there was no labor specialization, it meant that all the tribe took part on it. But, what is most important, this kind of statues are present all around Europe from Portugal to Crimea. That means that a very complex cultural network existed among the different tribes inhabiting the continent. Moreover, this network requires more interaction than material barter as it englobes culture and religious practices. This meant that in prehistoric Europe there was a common conceptual or ideological ground that was being transmitted without the existence of high interaction methods as big armies, developed transport, empires, or even writing. Therefore, it could be argued that the pre-international relations systems were especially strong due to its lack of resources.
Finally, we would like to acknowledge Xavi Bermudez, archaeologist of the Seró Museum, for all the information and help he has provided us. Thank you for your attention.